Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this talk. And thank you, Harry. Thank you, Darshana, for inviting me to make this presentation to the Bio2Device group. I'm very excited about this opportunity to share an original perspective on the awesome power linked to our ability to control breathing, a rare feature among living animals on Earth. Okay, so basically, I'd like to talk about a little bit, the physiology of breathing, what happens in our body when we breathe, when we do all the breath work that people are very familiar with, and how much it means in terms of controlling the breath, and the definition of what we would call mental muscles, which is kind of a misnomer, but I'll explain what it means. And the mental fitness part is based on the mental muscles and allows you to deal with all life challenges more easily. I go quickly over the core breathing practices that are known and show a little bit a different slant about a different perspective about some of those practices. Looking some breathing apps and some breathing devices, breathing trainer devices, and what might be missing in them, and some opportunity for action for you. So basically, I have a very humble goal here, is, as I mentioned, looking for feedback. You are an audience with a lot of technical background and understanding, and I'm pretty sure there are things that you might disagree with, or you might be skeptical about, and I'd love to hear your feedback about it. So about my background is that I have an engineering background, as you know, but most of my life experiences have been about exercising brain plasticity. I was born in Vietnam and studied until high school, went to France for my engineering studies, and joined a startup, and we sold it to an international company, and I ended up in Silicon Valley. The size of the pictures kind of reflect the amount of time, the amount of years I had spent in each area. And so I'm very steeped in 3 different cultures: Asian, Vietnamese culture, French, European, French and German. My wife is German, and American culture, of course. I've been forced to use my right hand when I was a kid, and that forced me to become ambidextrous. I've been very much attracted to Qigong, which I've been practicing for the last 20 plus years. And although my daytime job is about innovation, strategy, advising for startups, I enjoy the most is to be a coach, executive coach, and health fitness coach. So so I was inspired by these leaders who are basically pushing the envelope on the mental capabilities. I assume you're familiar with many of the pictures. I want to mention Helen Schucman, who is the author of the book, A Course in Miracles, that maybe some of you know about. I was raised as a Buddhist, and A Course in Miracles is basically a Christian book, but it has been incredibly eye-opening for me in terms of understanding, relationships in particular. I was introduced to it after my divorce, actually, and that helped me not repeat the mistakes of my first marriage. And I've been now married for more than 25 years. I'm happily married. So these are basically people who help me, understand what it is to kind of control your mind. And so now I don't know how to go to the next one. Oh yeah, do you see the next one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's working. Okay. And on the other side of the equation is people who have inspired me in terms of focusing on the breath. So starting with Aikido, which is basically breathing with the other person, as the name mentioned. The key in Aikido is about breathing. My Qigong master, Master Chok Fong, who taught me incredible things. and in particular, his ability to send waves that makes his students jump in the air. He didn't do it to me because he said I was not advanced enough. So I can't say, it works or not, but I've seen that happen. All the way to more recently now, people that you probably heard about, James Nestor and Patrick McKeown, who are really leaders and pioneers in understanding breath. And of course, Wim Hof, the Iceman, the man who is has shown incredible ability, even the ability to deal with infection through breathing and cold exposure. So as I mentioned about my background in terms of engineering, and when I looked at how doctors are dealing with problems, it's kind of almost the polar opposite of engineers. Engineers have to develop knowledge to build systems that perform specific functions. And doctors have to basically reverse engineer a system that no human has designed in order to understand what's going wrong. So I try to look at the human life as, from the engineer's perspective, as a transformation engine with its inputs and outputs. Basically, we need only three things fundamentally. We need air, we need water and food, nutrition, and we need thoughts. And actually they come in for, whether we want it or not. And that's what we have. And our life is about processing those three things, where air is the most critical and thought processing is the most impactful. And so the relationship between the two becomes, kind of obvious when you think about it. In terms of output, we create actions, physical actions based on our ability to physically interact with the material world. We create speech from our thoughts mainly. And of course, we reproduce and we have, waste products and byproducts. But the key thing here is that there is a feedback loop. Our speech interacts back with our thoughts and changes the way we process the thought later on. And so the quest I'm having is to understand how the processing of air impacts the way we process our thoughts, okay? And I'd like to invite anybody who would be interested in helping me at that level to contact me and help me think this through. So very quickly, basically, Stephen Richards, who is originally a kind of science fiction writer, is now focusing on the power of the mind. He's saying, basically to control your life, you have to control your mind. And to control your mind, you have to control your breath. So I'd like to show very briefly of some video, a couple of minutes of this video. So I have to stop the sharing. All right, so do you have the sound? So this is basically a quick video of the Shaolin monk who we've heard about, who are doing incredible feats. Look at how this guy is breathing when he comes out, okay? The key movement here is ability to breathe and concentrate the energy in a particular area. This is how he breathes. This is the long exhale that creates the power that he can use to do those feats. So this is something which is observed, but not really understood. And I think this is something that we need to surrender.
Many times, even 3 seconds, 2 seconds, while you're walking, while you're having coffee and tea, while you're having meeting, so you can meditate. Many people has a little bit misunderstanding about meditation. They think meditation meaning think of nothing, concentrate. So push too much. So we cannot block thought and emotion. In fact, we need thought and emotion. So whether you listen to your monkey mind or not, there's an issue. What I call monkey mind is chatting, pala 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 yada yada. So monkey mind is giving your opinion. So whether you listen to opinion or not, it's up to you, right? So through meditation, what we do is we have to make friends with the monkey mind. But how to make friends? Just giving banana doesn't work, you know. So right method is you need to give job to monkey mind. How to give job monkey mind? So the simple meditation technique is be aware of the breath. So you ask monkey mind, hello, what's breath? So monkey mind says, yeah, good idea. And be aware of breath. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. There's a lot of thought comes at the background. Don't care, no problem. So as long as if you're not forget your breath, anything is okay. No need too much concentration. Just simply be aware of your breath. Breathe in, out, in. Even two breath, one breath. So therefore, we can meditate everywhere, anytime.
So this last thing, I want you to just observe how he's breathing. This is the long exhale. I will go through a little bit later on. So that's all I wanted to share here. Basically, Shaolin monks are really amazing in the sense that they do feats that not everybody doing, but they replicate it with a lot of people. It's not just one person being exceptional, the way they train themselves. And originally it was because they were fighting pirates who would come and just basically raid the temples and for self-defense. And they have understood something that we still, maybe be amazed by, but we don't really understand how that works. So going back to the physiology of breathing, clearly, these are not new to you, but first thing that you observe when you look at this is that air and food have common pathways. Why so? Why don't we have one channel for air and one channel for food? It wouldn't work because we need to speak. And when we speak, we have to control breath. And that's why those pathways are mixed. And although the mouth is made mostly for eating, we end up using it for breathing. And it has a natural, reason is it's much easier to breathe out through the mouth or in through the mouth because the pathways is less convoluted. Like in the nose, you have to go through all the flaps in the airways here, and a longer path before it can reach the lungs. So the result of nose breathing is the fact that first it filters the air with the nasal hair, and it also moistens it. It warms the air so that the air does not reach your lungs, too cold. And when you exhale through the nose, you keep the moisture in, and so you don't dehydrate as much. Animals like camels and so on obligate nose breathers, so they keep the moisture because they breathe out through the nose. And when you do breathe through the nose, the nasal cavities triggers nitric oxide, which is the natural antiviral, and dilates the bronchi, helping you, absorb more air into the lungs. And because it's close to the olfactory bulb in the nasal cavities, wine tasters, for example, breathe in through the nose deeply when they taste wine, because that helps them remember that particular wine that they are tasting, because it reaches through the amygdala, the hippocampus, where the memory is being created. When you do a breath hold, basically you need to lower the epiglottis here to prevent air from escaping from the lungs. And the epiglottis is not a muscle. You activate it by moving the larynx, the muscle of the larynx up. And so it is something that some people might not be able to do well, and it takes some practice to really hold your breath for some time. And because when you hold your breath after an inhale, you keep the alveoli expanded for a sustained amount of time, and increases the lung capacity over time because they are basically trained for that. And at the same time, it strengthens the respiratory muscles as well. Because you have to resist the urge to breathe while you do breath holding, it improves your ability of your mind to control the part of the limbic system, which is the autonomic nervous system that controls the breathing. So there is a fight between the autonomic system and your cortex, and that improves your mind control. Now, if you look at the respiratory muscles, first thing is clearly there are different sets of muscles for inspiratory and expiratory. So the different muscles are different, and basically all breath work is about isolating those muscles, basically activating them separately. For example, activating the diaphragm and not the upper, intercostal muscles to get more air into the lower part of the lungs, or when you exhale, to use the abdominal to basically compress the lungs upward. And by some advanced breath work is about fine control because you move those muscles by small chunks, not in one big contraction. I go back to that, when we talk about the different practices. So now looking at the biochemistry part of it and the gas exchange, basically in inhaled air, we have 21% of oxygen, but in the air we exhale, that's still 16% of oxygen, which means that we only keep 20% of the available oxygen in our body. And that really surprised me the first time I realized that and said, oh, that's real. So what happens? There are 4 simultaneous respiration processes that happen when we breathe. The ventilation is the movement of air in and out of the lungs. The diffusion is when the molecule of oxygen go through the cellular, one cell thick membrane between the alveoli and the capillaries, and the oxygen being taken up by the red blood cells, and at the same time, the carbon dioxide is leaving the red blood cell and moving into the lungs because the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is higher in the blood than in the lungs, and same thing in the other way between the oxygen partial pressure in the lungs and the oxygen partial pressure in the blood. And the perfusion is taken care by the heart, which moves all this all the way to the delivery location, to the cells. And at the cell location, there is the reverse effect that happens, a diffusion of the oxygen into the cell. And that happens only because there is carbon dioxide in the cell, which is highly attracted by the red blood cell, who basically dissociate the oxygen and leave it to the cell. So the cellular respiration is a complex mechanism, which I don't know if it's totally well understood yet, but basically it converts, it uses glucose and oxygen to basically create ATP, which is the basic fuel for the other cell functions, creates CO2 as a result, and water. But the key thing here is that I was interested in is what happens when you hold your breath. As I mentioned, it sustains the expansion of the alveoli, and it basically moves along this curve called the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve that shows that when the carbon dioxide is higher, it becomes more acidic, and the same amount of it needs less partial pressure of oxygen to dissociate the oxygen from the blood. And it's the other way around. When the carbon dioxide goes down, then the oxygen is held more strongly by the red blood cells. So when you hold your breath, clearly there's no carbon dioxide that can escape the lungs. And so the pressure in the lungs in carbon dioxide goes up. And at a certain time, then the carbon dioxide in the blood cannot go into the lungs. So carbon dioxide in the blood increases. And we have specific sensors inside our blood vessels, which measure that that rise in CO2 and will trigger an inhale reflex when the threshold is being crossed. Interestingly, there is no mechanism in our body to detect when you don't have enough oxygen. It only detects when you have too much CO2. And the inhale reflex is actually not to get more oxygen in the body first, it's to extract more carbon dioxide out of the blood into the lungs. So when you do a long exhale, there is, as you've seen in the Shaolin monk example, they are mentally directing energy in certain areas of the body. And I believe it is linked to the fact that there are small muscles called the precapillary sphincters, which basically block the transit of oxygenated blood to the capillary in the areas that you don't need to, so that it goes in priority to the area that we concentrate your energy. So this is, again, it's more like an assumption of mine, but I believe this is part of how they do it. If you look at the neural aspects of it, you know, the neurobiology of the breathing, there are two elements in our neural system that are involved deeply. The cingulate cortex, which basically is the interface between the neocortex and the limbic system, which controls our breathing, you know, autonomically. And this is where emotion is being formed and the process, and also the center for learning and memory. And it's been proven that the anterior circular cortex is helping us control the breath. This is not the autonomic part. This is the control, the voluntary control of the breath. And the other part is the vagus nerve, which, as Harry mentioned earlier, you know, has been impacted by COVID in a certain way, which is a main component of the parasympathetic nervous system and is activated when you slow down your breath. It's been shown that the vagal tone is linked to the regulation of stress response. So if you can control your vagus nerve, then you will control your stress response. And both are activated during breath work. And here I put that in italics because I think this is basically going beyond the limit of, you know, what science knows and can demonstrate, is that the cingulate cortex and the vagus nerve are the putative loci of mental muscles. It's still a very big area. It must be possible to hone down on it and understand exactly what happens in there. But the mental muscle would enable the reasoning mind to engage faster after the emotion strike. You cannot stop emotions. Emotion will strike. It will trigger conditioned responses that have been developed over time by experience. And the whole idea is that if you have mental muscle and you develop mental fitness, you facilitate the interception of those conditioned response. So you cannot control the emotion. You can start controlling very quickly what the conditioned response might be. So in terms of the psychology aspect of it, clearly we know that all emotions impact breathing. You know, she took my breath away. This is breathtaking. We use that every day. And so conversely, breathing can impact, you know, the consequence of emotions. The breathing awareness, as had been shown in a short video, helps quiet the thinking mind because it's a focus on one aspect. So interestingly, the monkey mind, as the monk explained, is not the limbic system. It's actually the noise in our brain, which is linked to the conditioned response to emotions. So by being aware of your breathing, you center on the present moment. And the key thing here is that you slow down the time between two thoughts. On average, we have maybe 20,000 or 40,000 thoughts a day. And during meditation, the number of thoughts that go through the mind slows down, and you have more time between two thoughts, and that leaves room for more unconscious sources to feed thoughts into your brain. So you may have more room for thought you would not have thought about if you have been continuously, dealing with the noise in your brain. Deep breathing means something very special. Deep breathing, as you probably know, is breathing through the belly, getting more air in the lower part of the lungs, which are bigger in volume. But it means only to fill more alveoli. It does not mean to have a lot of air in immediately. Like you do it slowly, so you have a light and deep to get air in slowly, and that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which, as we know, changes our response to stress and so on. And if we can lower our breathing rate, which is usually about 15 breaths per minute, so about 4 seconds in and out, down to 6 breaths per minute, which is 10 seconds. And by leaving more time to the oxygen in our lungs, we actually allowed to extract as much oxygen, but with a lot less ventilation. So if you think of this yogi principle that our lives is limited by a total number of breaths we can take, if you slow down your breathing rate, you would naturally increase your longevity by using less breath per minute. But the key thing here is that you don't exert your body as much if you have less ventilation with the same amount of oxygen that goes into the blood. So moving to breath control, basically the breath control is what you need to do when you do breath work, and you have to basically consciously think about your respiratory muscles and understand how they work separately. I have experimented with a method that I call the X-hold method, which I believe is being used by people who basically do deep diving, but I don't know that for a fact, and that's one area I'd like to investigate later on. But this is how it works. To do X-hold, you inhale normally, you hold your breath, and then after you hold your breath for a certain amount of time, the CO2 is going to accumulate in the blood, and you're going to feel the need to inhale, as we talked about earlier. If at that time you allow your epiglottis to open very quickly, very shortly, and let go a little bit of air, you decrease the pressure of CO2 in your lungs, and it can extract more CO2 from the blood. But you do it very, very briefly, and you resume the full breath holding. And you can repeat that, a number of times after more breath holding and the pressure comes in. And I've experienced that by while I'm doing exercise. So, for example, I've been training myself after a conversation with a Qigong master that told me that he was able to do 100 push-ups in one breath. I tried that. It took me a year to get there, but I can do it. Basically, by doing X-hold, like I do one push-up, the second push-up, I do a very brief X-hold. I call it a puff, and hold my breath. I don't inhale, and I continue that, basically 50 times, which means 100 push-ups. So the benefit of doing that is basically exercising all the muscle of your breathing in a very fine way. You don't let them go quickly. You know, when you have a very heavy weight you want to lift, you can go very fast, and it's easier than when you go very slowly, because that's when you need a lot more tonal intensity to in the stimuli to the muscle. As you work out, you develop muscles, but also in parallel, you develop the strength in the intensity of your stimuli. Because you develop your CO2 resilience, what happens is that there's more CO2 in the cell, and that allows the oxygen to leave the red blood cell faster. So it improves cellular respiration. So as I mentioned, I believe that doing S-hold improves strength buildup, not just by the muscle, but also by the strength of your stimuli, and develop the self-command, controlling your mind, and faster mental presence when emotions rise. So this is how I get to the mental muscle definition, because physical workout does increased intensity of the muscle, of the stimuli to the muscle as well as the muscle. Breath work develop respiratory muscles and increased intensity of tonal stimuli to certain neural pathways. Okay, those pathways are located somewhere within the cingulate cortex and the vagus nerve, which is a huge area, and you know, a lot more work would be needed to go deeper there. And it facilitates interception by our thinking mind of the conditioned response. And so we are more able to take the right decision instead of making decisions that we regret immediately after we've done them under the spell of the emotion. So for the mental fitness, I like to use the definition of Shirzad Chamine, which I mentioned earlier in terms of one of my inspiring leaders. He is the author of Positive Intelligence, and he defines mental fitness as the capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive mindset rather than through negative emotions. And when I discovered that, I realized how much convergence there was between his vision and mine, and I decided to include it in this presentation because it fits so well, and he says it a lot better than me, and his approach has been backed by more research, and basically with today, I think millions of people following his positive intelligence principles. So he used factor analysis to address the root causes of the issue where we are being hijacked by our emotions, and resulted in a radical simplification of how to understand the mind. And he called that the mental operating system. They interview CEOs, executives, the people across the world in 50 countries and so on. So what are the principles of positive intelligence, which is the method, a model to develop mental fitness? There are two brain structures in our mind that frame our mental processes, and they are in constant opposition. That's what he called the sage brain, which could be basically in the neocortex, and it is able to see the positive in anything that happens to us. And the judge brain, which is more adept to rushing to judgment and seeing the negative in everything, and it's clearly part of the conditioned response we have to emotion. In young children, basically the sage voice dominates. That's why babies smile all the time, they laugh, they're happy. They don't have a judge who's showing the negative that can happen in life, and that only happens as you have more life experience and you grow up. So all those survival habits that have to be developed to deal with life experiences end up fostering the growth of what Shirzad is calling the saboteurs, which are accomplices that strengthen the judge voice in our mind and force us to see the negative in everything. The 9 saboteurs are based on the combination of the 3 basic human needs in terms of...
you frozen.
I'm frozen?
Phac, your screen is frozen.
So basically, when the emotions strike, the judge's voice dominates and triggers the negative response through the different saboteurs' perspective, the 9 different ways they can see the world in a negative way. The positive intelligence has defined 3 core mental muscles, only 3, as they try to do factor analysis and go and boil it down to the minimum, required to understand the situation. The first muscle is called the self-command muscle. Basically, knowing that physical workouts are based on exercise reps to strengthen the muscle groups and develop the tonal stimuli. Mental workouts are based on PQ reps, okay? And the PQ reps is basically used to strengthen the neural pathways to allow the sage brain to counter the judge as quickly as possible. And as defined by Shirzad, PQ reps are what he calls exquisite attention to body sensations. And he defined a wide range of PQ reps going through all the different sensations we have. One of them is the tactile one, when just by pressing our fingertips against each other so strongly that we can feel the ridges of our fingers, we create a focus that takes our mind away from the thinking mind. And just like the meditation aspect, it basically quiets the mind. The nice thing about doing this that way, you don't need an environment where there's no noise. You don't need to go into a room to start meditating. You can do it while you talk to someone and they are basically maybe aggressing you with words that triggers your emotion. By doing those PQ reps, by pressing your fingers against each other and feeling it, you can quiet your mind and activate your sage brain faster. So that's the period. You can do that with tactile aspects, with touch, with the visual, by observing the person's face, for example, by listening to sound, far away sound and concentrating on them, and so on. My own experimentation have shown that hold exercises are effective PQ reps for developing self-command. I took the test that is available on the Positive Intelligence website, and I came up with a 92% score in terms of self-command. I was surprised, but I believe it's linked to the fact that I've been exercising it, way before I knew about PQ reps. So the second muscle is what he calls the saboteur interceptor. It's a muscle that stops the saboteur in its tracks, basically. And they have been developed over time because of survival strength we have developed. Each of them have a strength which is useful to cope with difficulties, but they become saboteurs because that strength is being overused all the time, and it becomes a nuisance due to the the conditioned responses that are negative. So the PQ method, the positive intelligence method, provide guidance to weaken those saboteurs, and depending on each of their characteristics. The third muscle is the sage perspective, which has 5 different powers that are basically the power empathy, which we know is important to start understanding the other side, but also the exploration, to look at all the different possible views of looking at the system, so that you can find the positive in them, what we call the gift and opportunity in anything that happens. And the creative mind comes in to innovate and find different solutions, navigate among those different solutions, and then decide to act decisively once you know what's the right thing to do. Now, for me, the impact of breath work on the first muscle is very clear, but I don't know yet how far breathing can improve the interceptor and the sage perspective. There is one aspect, for example, that I have identified, which is, it happens to me, me now that I'm 70, that, you have sometimes the urge to go to the bathroom. And by using deep breathing, particularly breathing, exhaling with a focus on the bladder, basically you can intercept the urge to pee. And that's one way that I can see that breathing in a certain way can help you deal with messages that your body is sending you to tell you something is wrong. But if you know that something is not that wrong, because you can, you know that you just peed an hour ago, so it's not likely that your bladder will explode if you don't pee right away. You could kind of stop that message and eliminate its results. So, but again, this is something that I don't know for sure at this level, and I believe more work is needed here. So this leads me to mental longevity. Basically, my definition of mental longevity is the ability to sustain adequate mental fitness despite age-related decrease in physical and mental abilities. So as we go older, we know that there will have a decrease. The question is that what is the last thing we want to lose control over? I mean, yes, maybe we end up in a wheelchair, so we can't walk, but life can be good in a wheelchair, and so on and so forth, until where as long as you keep mental fitness, I believe you could have an enjoyable, old age. It ensures, therefore, your better decision making, better interpretation of the facts, as you lose abilities physically or even mentally. And as we go older, we start being more dependent on others. No matter what, we will lose more and more abilities. But if we keep mental longevity, we will avoid feeling unhappy, avoid conflicts, because we have reduced sensory accuracy. We can't hear as well, we can't see as well. So we might misunderstand what people are doing around us. And if we use our mental fitness at that time to see the positive in it, we will be able to have, a more enjoyable life in way beyond the 80s or 90s. So I have started interviewing people in their 90s and plus, people who are spirited seniors, who don't suffer from major chronic condition, and try to understand a little bit what the mental level, the mental fitness level is, and how they accomplish it. This is work in progress. So I'm not jumping to conclusion, but clearly most of them have a positive general outlook on others. They see the positive in others, and in that situation, even though they might be limited physically in certain ways. The stress response is easygoing. It's like, yeah, I can't do anything about it. I live with it. They accept things that are worsening over time in the environment, and they're unavoidable. So the trend is always kind of down slowly, but they have an acceptance and they see the positive in it. They have good appetite, of course, with moderation. A good friend of mine, and she's a family friend, and she's 90. She's going to be 99 this year in August. She had a small glass of wine at lunch, and enjoys eating, with moderation. She doesn't eat a lot, but she had a very sharp mind and doesn't have any chronic conditions, and not even high blood pressure or cholesterol or something like that. And a sense of humor, of course. So I want to take a few examples of advanced breathing protocols, conscious or unconscious, that have had a positive impact on the mental health or even the physical health of some people. So the first one I want to share with you is actually linked to long COVID. It's a friend of mine, a very close friend, who is an extreme sports person. He lives in the mountains, so he's used to climbing hills, biking, also loves to go surfing. And he got COVID in March of 2020. And for the 9 months after that, he realized that his performance decreased. He was out of breath climbing hills that he used to climb easily. He didn't know what to do about it. And then he took a week of extreme surfing because, you know, he used to do that. He went to the Atlantic coast in France and spent a week surfing there. And during that week, he ended up being submerged underwater by huge, 10-foot waves that kept him underwater for up to a minute or more in water, where he had to hold his breath. And after that experience, he realized that he was able to he recovered most of his, if not all of his, ability to perform climbing hills and so on. And there is a correlation between that evolution of his long COVID breathing issues and the forced apnea that he had to go through underwater. Is there a direct causation part? I don't know, but it's very correlated. Another experience was a personal experience in pain control that I had during my colonoscopy. Have to do one every 5 years or every 10 years. I had one like maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And I decided to do it without any anesthesia. Actually, my first one 10 years ago, I didn't have one either. But my wife would need the anesthesia because she wouldn't be able to withstand the procedure. So the doctor, of course, followed my wishes, and I was able to see the whole procedure with the probe going all the way to the cecum, with the 2 left turns. And I was able to see, something I wanted to see, which is the trip within my body. I was able to feel the probe each time it was turning. It was poking, at the colon, and it was a little bit painful. But by breathing slowly and deeply, it was totally acceptable. And I was able to converse with the doctor and ask questions as I went. The doctor was amazed that I was even easier to deal with than people who even actually had some local anesthesia in order to go through the process. Another personal experience I want to talk to you, and I think we have a little bit of time to go through that, is my broken elbow recovery, and also treatment that exists in Florida in the Aviv clinic. So let me go very quickly through the elbow recovery. I see that time is going by. For my 50th birthday, I went on vacation in Vietnam, going back to Vietnam after 32 years of absence. I had a layover in Hong Kong that was for 5 hours. So I went to visit the downtown, and I fell. And I broke my elbow. I ended up in the emergency room, and they took an X-ray. It was hurting a lot. They had to move the arm for that. But time was going by, and I see that my plane was about to leave in an hour and a half. And there is at least a 20-25 minute rain ride to the airport. So I told my son, who was with me, let's move, let's leave. I don't want to stay in Hong Kong with this. So I walked out of the emergency room, something I wouldn't recommend anybody to do, and called a cab. And before going to the airport, I decided that maybe it's not good to go like this. I may need to put some kind of a splint around the arm to kind of isolate it a little bit. So I asked a gentleman a Chinese person who helped me because he was speaking English, to find a medicine man, and we found one, and he accepted to treat me right away. I had no waiting. And you see him here. If you are a fan of martial art movies, you might recognize him as a movie actor. He was playing in some movie with Bruce Lee, particularly in Bloodsport. Not a famous actor, but a martial art actor nevertheless. So he said he couldn't do anything. I thought he would be able to pull the bone back into place, but he said, no, the break was too bad. I cannot do anything. I'm going to give you just some herbal, paste, and there you go. So I went back to the flight, 12-hour flight. I arrived on a weekend, so I had to wait 48 hours for my surgery. It lasted 4 hours. And at the end, the surgeon said, well, I did the best I could, but you're missing about almost a quarter of an inch of bone, and I had to put a metal plate. If it grows back, good for you. We can remove the metal plate later on, but if it does not grow back, considering your age, then we'll have a second surgery for a graft from the hip bone. So I didn't want to go back to a second surgery. And I talked to my brother. My brother is a dermatologist in France, but he has been also trained in Chinese traditional medicine and Tibetan medicine. And he told me to do bone marrow qigong. I didn't know what it was. And so I looked for a source, and I found this book that he talked about. Yeah. Is basically a certain meditation practice where you visualize your bone growing in a particular position, which I'm doing here. I would practice basically an hour and a half every day for a month and maybe 6 weeks. And at the end, the surgeon did an x-ray, and he said he was amazed the bone has grown back. And so he was able to remove the plate a month later. And I went through only 4 sessions of physical therapy and got full recovery. Part of the visualization I did during the process is to visualize the elbow in motion. It was blocked, of course, by the cast, but I visualized moving the elbow. So when I removed the cast, I was able to recover all the joint range of motion more easily and faster. The other part is the AVIV clinic in the villages, which is basically hyperbaric oxygen treatment, where people sit in a room where the air is under pressure 3 times the normal atmospheric pressure. They breathe oxygen under pressure to basically force their lungs to get more oxygen, and it appears to reverse aging. Okay, by lengthening the telomeres, by decreasing the amount of senescent cells in the blood, and it needs about 60 sessions over 90 days. And the way it works is that the oxygen is given under high pressure. The patients have to perform mentally challenging exercise doing that, and then periodically they would cut off the high pressure. They still breathe normal oxygen, but it creates a feeling of relative hypoxia, which is the cell believe that they have not enough oxygen. And then hypoxia triggers stem cells generation, because in the fetus, when there is cell replication, if you have too many cells with the same amount of blood vessels, there's not enough oxygen for everybody. So it triggers the generation of stem cells in order to have more blood vessels. So that the same phenomena happens here by virtual hypoxia, which is less traumatic, according to Dr. Efrati, the founder of this company, to create stem cell and create the reverse aging process that we see. So you can check them out, and it's very expensive. I tried to sign up, but I was a little bit slowed down by the cost, and also the fact that you need to spend 90 days over there and stop everything else you're doing, which is not possible for me at this time. So I need to go faster. How much time do I have, Harry?
We might be over the time, I think.
We're probably a little over the time right now.
Okay, so maybe I'm going to skip this part very quickly. So we talk about nose breathing, and you could tape your mouth at night if you want to really do that. It's a little bit scary initially, but it works. Deep breathing, you do belly breathing, but also chest. There's no reason not to use the upper part of the lungs. And a method of box breathing, which is inhale hold, exhale, and hold, and that allows you to basically recover breathing much faster. An advanced practice is to do step breathing. You breathe by small chunks, which forces you to do fine muscle control. And the long, deep exhale that we talked about earlier, where you concentrate the energy in some areas of your body. Another part which is interesting is the 4-7-8 method that allows you to fall asleep better, and you can adapt it with different counts depending of your experience in breathing. I'll skip all these things, which are the yogi kind of approach that might not be as interesting now. So sorry about that. If you're more interested, just call me up. This is a way I try to kind of categorize the different breathing methods. I look at breathing apps. Most of them are about simply basic relaxation. They don't do anything for mental fitness. One of them has custom inhale and exhale time length, which is very important, depending on your ability to hold your breath. And about the breathing devices, most of them basically increase the pressure of needed to exhale and to inhale, and therefore strengthen the respiratory muscle. One of them has an app with that, but they don't address mental fitness as well. So this is the pros and cons of this app. The key drawback for me is it perpetuates mouth breathing, which is not what you should do. So that's a problem, because you can't have a device on your nose easily. So I think there is a fundamental problem with this device. So if anybody can come up with a solution for that, I think it will be extremely well. So opportunities for actions. There's some suggested area here. I'm just listing the couple that came to mind. Study the Shaolin monks, the Pearl drivers, breath work, and maybe ability to sleep through melatonin generation. I have a Facebook group, and I invite you to join. And also, I'm going to do a group session in a month in order to go through the different breathing practices. So contact me if you need to. All right. I hope I have some time for some questions, if there's any. Thank you very much.
Phac. And it's open for questions, really quick ones.
Well, I found this is Ron. Phac, this is a very, very stimulating talk. And I hope you will be making the slides available to us so that we can review a lot of the areas that you had to skip over very rapidly. I think there's tremendous relevance to what you're doing. I'm reading a book by someone you might know or be familiar with. Sanjay Gupta is a well-known physician who is actually a neurosurgeon. And he has written a book about how to build a better mind. If you haven't read it, you should, because he has a whole section in the book about having met in his travels with Dalai Lama. And he learned the techniques of meditation and breathing directly from the Dalai Lama. And it's a fascinating story because he incorporates this into his thinking. I won't go on, but I would tell you that much of what you've discussed is quite relevant to brain health, just as you were describing it. And I loved your discussion of the physiology of oxygen and carbon dioxide and why and it's fascinating. And you really touched on an area in which much more research is needed, but much is being gained very rapidly. I'll stop there.
Right. I just also have a quick comment I posted in chat a lot, but quite a bit resonates with some of my experiences and how breathing helps control pain. I think focusing on breath and mind can also helps if there is a urge for peeing and stuff like that as well. So I think a lot resonates with my experiences. So it definitely needs more research, and these kind of wholesome practices should become, I think, mainstream part of medicine.
Thank you. Thank you. Just an aside, Ron, following up on your mention on your talk about Sanjay Gupta, I actually happened to have met the Dalai Lama twice. Once in France, he had a huge tent with for thousands of people, where he had a couple of days of exchange. I was not close to him, but I was in the same room as him. And another one in the Bay Area here, where he came and talked at the shoreline one point in time, and was very inspiring in his approach of mind control and so on. So thank you for your input. So please don't hesitate to contact me at phac@paceworks.com. I think it's somewhere on the online. Thank you very much for your feedback and for your interest. That gives me a little bit of more incentive to continue my research. I do this kind of, my favorite pastime, beyond everything else I am doing as well. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, Phac, for informing us a way to maybe calm and improve our health. So thank you very much.